Every morning when the bell rings and the other students file into their classrooms, there is one boy who always arrives late. It is not that he tries to be late. He just is. No one really knows why. It is as if he has his own time, one that does not follow the rules of anyone else's schedule. He walks through the school gates with a quiet confidence, his head held high. His steps never hurry, never seem to be rushed. It's almost as if the world around him doesn't matter. The other kids stare as he passes by, whispering to each other in curiosity. "Why is he always late?" someone whispers in a low voice. Nobody dares to ask him, though. He's different from anyone they've ever met. He doesn't say a word when they try to talk to him. He just nods or sometimes stares at them with a far-off, knowing look. It's clear that he doesn't give a damn about their questions. The other students are puzzled. They would watch as he entered the classroom. He was always right as the bell rang, signaling that the morning period is over. His eyes are always cool, never giving out anything at all. What's the secret behind it? How come he doesn't give answers when asked why he always comes in late? These questions went unanswered, but one thing is for sure. Mystery has begun. As the days continue, the mystery of the late boy only seems to grow. The other students can't help but talk about him. "Did you see him again? Always late, never answers when you ask him anything. What's his deal?" They whisper to each other in the hallways, during lunch and even in the classrooms. They can't figure him out. He's odd, a misfit who cannot blend into their world. Others claim that he hides something. That's something too huge for someone to comprehend. But the boy doesn't care. He comes to class every day late as usual and makes a beeline for the back row. His eyes do not catch any other person's. His eyes are fixed at the window, gazing into the outside world beyond the school gates. He doesn't pay attention to the lessons, doesn't look at the teacher when called upon. He just sits there, calm and unbothered, as if the rest of the world is something he's already figured out. What is he thinking? What might be so important outside of class to ignore everything else? Why doesn't he care about school, about lessons that everyone fights to get a handle on? The questions revolve within his classmates' heads, but no one asks him, since he never did seem to make any difference. So they kept whispering in the effort of piecing together the enigma of the mysterious boy who seemingly cared for nothing but what was beyond the window. One chilly morning, as the boy walks through the school gates, something unusual happens. An old man, hunched over, with a long coat and weathered face, steps right in his path. The boy doesn't stop but is caught by the gaze of the man. Without saying anything, the man leans close, whispers something into the boy's ear, something that nobody else can hear. It is but a murmur, too soft to hear, but the boy listens carefully. For an instant, the boy's face is blank, and then, unexpectedly, he nods as if he understood everything the man had said. The stranger smiled, patted him on the shoulder, and walked off without another word. The boy does not look surprised. On the contrary, he smiles also, just a small, knowing smile. What did the man say? Why is the boy smiling after that moment? No one else knows, and the mystery grows deeper. Days turn into weeks, and the boy doesn't show up at school. No one sees him in the halls, no one hears his footsteps outside the classroom. The teachers begin to ask, but no one seems to know where he is. At first, people think maybe he's just sick or on a long vacation, but then the questions start. Where did he go? Was he in trouble? Why didn't anyone warn them? The whispers grow louder. Maybe he disappeared on purpose. Maybe there was something he didn't want anyone to know. Time passes, and still, there's no sign of him. Some start to forget about him, but for others, the questions never stop. Was he hiding from something? Or did he leave for a reason no one could understand? Years later, a strange figure appears in the city. He's wearing royal clothes, rich, elegant fabrics that shine under the sunlight. His presence commands respect, and his calm demeanor makes it clear that he is no ordinary man. The people in the streets stare with their mouths agape, whispering to one another. Who is he? Where did he come from? And then, in the most stunning twist of all, someone knows who he is. It's the boy. The boy who always walked into school late. The boy who disappeared without trace. But now he is not a student. He is a king, ruler of a mighty kingdom. How did he transform from the quiet, mysterious boy to the leader of a land? What happened during the years he was gone? The mystery deepens as the people try to make sense of the impossible. How did a boy who never cared for school become the king they now see before them? Now, sitting on the throne of a grand palace, a boy turned king invites the people of his kingdom to hear his story. They gather there in awe, wondering how someone so quiet, so mysterious, had risen to such great power. The king begins to speak, his voice calm and steady. Everything I learned, he says, I learned by being late. I watched. I listened. I observed the world around me. While others rushed, I waited. I was patient. I understood things others couldn't. The crowd listens, fascinated by his words. But even as he speaks, the king leaves out key details. He doesn't tell them everything. What happened during the years he was gone? What exactly did he do to rise to power? The questions grow, but the king doesn't offer any answers. He leaves them hanging on the edge of a secret, a story that's only partially revealed. What is he hiding? What really happened during those missing years? One day, the king's old teacher, one of the few who knew him from his school days, arrives at the palace. She followed the rising power of this young boy from an age where he used to always turn late into one of the kings. Still, there was something that just wasn't right about all that. She felt there is so much more to this king's story than what he allows them to know. There, standing in the royal hall, she finally asked him, "What really happened? Why were you always late? Why did not care as much for school as the others did?" His face is unreadable, his expression blank. For a moment, there's silence. His eyes seem distant, as if he's thinking about something far away. Then, he says nothing. He just stares at her. Why does he refuse to answer? What is he hiding? Is there something in his past that he doesn't want to share? The teacher waits, but he never gives her a full answer. Her doubts grow. She senses that there is more to the story than what the king is willing to share with her. The king's history slowly unravels because he opens up to a select few advisors. He mentions a secret mentor, who was a key player in getting him to the position he now sits on. He explains how he had met this mystical person during the years he was absent, a powerful man who had been observing him for many years. This mentor, the king reveals, taught me everything I needed to know about leadership. They showed me how to control my destiny, how to read the world and understand what others couldn't see. But the king is vague. Who was this mentor? What made them so powerful? And why did they choose the boy to be their pupil? The more the king speaks, the more the questions multiply. What exactly did this mentor teach him? Was the king always destined for greatness? Or was he shaped by this unknown figure into the ruler he is now? The king's path to power wasn't an easy one. He tells his closest advisors about the test he had to face, something no one else could have done. It was about more than just being patient, he explains. It was about timing, about understanding when the world was ready for change. The king had to wait for the perfect moment, a moment that only he could see. But what was this test, really? It wasn't just a challenge of patience. It was a challenge of understanding the world in a way that no one else could. Could anyone else have passed it? He asks, as if daring them to try. Or was I chosen for something greater? The advisors exchange uncertain glances. Could this be true? Was the king really destined for this power, or did he face a test so difficult that only he could have succeeded? The mystery deepens, leaving everyone wondering, what exactly was the test, and how did it change him forever? As the king's story begins, a dark shadow begins to cast its omen over the palace. Among his closest advisors, men who have been by his side since the king first ascended to power, are whispers of doubt. He hears the words that fall from the king's lips. He listens to the way the king talks about his past and doesn't believe it. A boy who was always late, he thinks to himself. How is someone like that able to be a ruler? There must be something more to this story. The advisor begins to investigate, looking into the king's past, his disappearance, and the mysterious mentor. What he finds only deepens his suspicions. Was the king hiding something? Was there a dark side to his story? Something he's been keeping secret all along? The advisor begins to question everything he thought he knew about the king. Was he really the hero the kingdom believed him to be, or was there something much darker lurking beneath the surface? The advisor, now consumed with doubt, starts plotting to uncover the truth, even if it means betraying the king. The questions keep piling up. What is the king hiding? What did he do during those missing years? And most importantly, what will happen if the truth comes out? The atmosphere in the palace becomes tense as the advisor, unable to keep his doubts contained any longer, steps forward. His voice cuts through the crowd. "Prove that you are the ruler you claim to be!" He challenges the king, his eyes burning with suspicion. The king stands motionless, his face calm and unreadable. He doesn't flinch, doesn't show the slightest hint of anger. Instead, he smiles, a little confident smile, as if the challenge were no bigger than a simple request. "Very well," he returns, his voice steady. The crowd watches, breathless. How will he prove himself? The advisor, who has sensed an opportunity to reveal a truth, watches closely too. Will this test expose the secrets the king has worked so hard to keep hidden? Will the well-crafted image of the king as the wisest of rulers finally crumble? The challenge has been laid down. The whole kingdom is in suspense with the question of what would happen as the king declares his powers. Tension hangs in the air as everybody waits for what might come next. But with the king poised to deliver, a chill of doubt runs up in the air. The challenge has already set high stakes and no one can tell what is going to happen at the moment of its start. In the course of proving his worth, the king surprisingly begins to narrate his mysterious disappearance story. "I did not leave because of an accident," he said, cutting the rising tension with a serious voice. The kingdom was left speechless, listening as he continues. "I left to find something." The eyes of the king wander afar as if recalling the travel. A rare old artifact, one that only he with patience could wait to discover, the one who could recognize time. The advisor could not help but be aghast and wonder what the artifact might be. What in heaven could it be? How did it endow him with the right to reign? The more the king talks, the more mysterious the mystery becomes. However, all the questions remain. Why was this artifact so vital? What kind of power was it granting him? And most importantly, why would he leave everything behind and vanish into obscurity to look for it? The truth comes forth. But with that comes more questions. Secrets behind the disappearance of the king, the power of the artifact, and his rise to rule are all slowly piecing together. But the complete picture remains out of reach. As the king continues to speak, his tone changes, revealing a side of him the kingdom had never seen before. "To gain this power," he admits, "I had to give up something precious, something I can never get back." A hush falls over the crowd. The advisor leans forward, eager to hear more. What did the king sacrifice for his rise to power? What could possibly be worth so much? The king's eyes hold the weight of his confession. "I gave up my innocence, my past, and a chance to live a normal life. The power came with a cost I was not ready for, but I had to pay it to gain greatness." The truth is very hard for the kingdom to swallow. What had he sacrificed? And was it worth it? The price of power is never easy, but how far would he go to hold on to it? The kingdom starts realizing that power is a dangerous gift, which can devour everything in its way. The story of the king comes out with a painful truth that even the greatest rulers have to sacrifice. But are they always worth the cost? Just as the king finishes his speech, a figure emerges from the shadows. It was his mentor who had influenced his journey and taught him everything he needed to know. The crowd gasps at the sheer authority of his mentor as he comes forward to take center stage. He bows with respect before his mentor, as he knew his rise without this person would have never been achieved. The mentor speaks, his voice deep and commanding. The boy was never late by accident, he reveals. Every moment of waiting, every delay was part of a grand plan. He was learning, observing, preparing for something far bigger than anyone could see. His purpose was always clear, but the world was too blind to recognize it. And all of that finally made sense, the purpose of his lateness. The kingdom, still in shock, struggles to comprehend what they've just learned. What was the boy's purpose? Was he always destined for this role? Was he chosen for greatness long before anyone even knew who he was? The final revelation leaves the kingdom reeling, unable to grasp the full truth of the king's mysterious journey. The boy's story is no longer just about patience. It's about destiny, power, and a purpose that transcended time. Finally, the late boy leaves for a life and becomes one of those whose legacy will never fade into the pages of time. The people of the kingdom slowly started to understand that what he was trying to say was that timing was everything. It is not being the first, but sometimes it can be a matter of being patient, waiting for that particular moment when the world is ripe enough for the change to happen. It just proves that great is not done in haste, but knows when to wait and act or to take. And as a result, the story of the boy becomes a lesson to the whole kingdom in that it molds the thought for them to think in relation to time and success. A weakness does not have to be tardiness, the king informs them. Sometimes it's the key to greatness. And as the boy, now a wise king, looks out over his kingdom, he knows that his story will be told for generations to inspire patience and timing. His legacy will live on not just in his rule, but in the hearts of those who learn sometimes that waiting is the most powerful choice of all. The story of the late boy who became a king is more than just a tale of power. It's a reminder that greatness doesn't come from being first. It comes from understanding the right time to act, and that, in the end, is the true legacy of the boy who was always late.